Banjo looks after everyone, doesn't he?
Banjo's accepting tips later as well, if you've got any tips for him. So, let's start right sincerely, right back at the very beginning of the phenomenon which is This Is England. Where did it all start? Where was the first idea, and did it the film turn out as that initial idea was?
I think the whole reason I started filmmaking was to because I think the people I grew up with and the town in which I grew up, and when I started watching Scorsese's films, especially his early stuff like Mean Streets, and I realised that he was making, because people were making, The Godfather, but he made something about the sort of much smaller time crooks that he'd seen when he was growing up, looking out of his window in New York, and I remember being really inspired by his movies that you could look at in your community around you, rather than just thinking I've got to write a horror, a sci-fi, a thriller, a gangster flick, actually believing that the people you've grown up with were worthy of a feature film. And I suppose the biggest turning point in my life was really what happened to Tomo's character in This Is England. And I literally went from being this shaggy-haired kid with a squirrel jumper on, and I was getting fucking bullied, and there was some. It's a really funny place, Uttoxeter, because you sort of drive through and it looks like quite a pretty place, but it was quite savage at times. And I remember going into town one Saturday, and it was like I'd seen punks around. I was only like 9 or 10, and I can remember seeing skinheads for the first time, and just like, what the fuck are they? And I was being bullied, I was being bullied a lot at school, and I looked much akin as he did when he was wandering around, a bit of a loner, and I saw these skinheads, and I just thought, God, I want to be like them. I want to dress like that, and it was as everyone was following Keegan and Ian both, and I was like, I want to be like Joe Hawkins and Roger Daltrey and McVicker, slightly different heroes. And yeah, one of my main ambitions at that point was to go to prison, I think. So, but I met a character a bit like Woody, who basically taught me about the original skinhead movement, and it was, although obviously when I was growing up in the 80s, it was the second incarnation of skinhead. It wasn't the '69. The original movement, but I was lucky enough to meet a skinhead that Woody's based on, that was actually teaching me, the first thing he played me, I think, was Skinhead Moonstomp by Samarup, and then Toots, and he was talking to me about the clothes you needed to wear, and Levi Red Stripe, all of these kind of things that were important to being a skinhead. So there was two sort of different factions growing up, and one of them was the racist side, and then the other was people that loved the original movement. So my initial introduction to it was like you see in the original film. And so I suppose ultimately it was, I realised, I think after I'd made a few films and I'd done Romeo Brass, I realised at that period of time in my life was the most important for me, becoming a filmmaker, because it was an introduction to a world I'd never seen, and I saw violence, that was horrific and changed me as a person. I also had the best times of my life, and it was one of those summers. I think most kids have a summer where you change. Some kids, you're 13, 14, some people it's when they go to university, but for me I was like 11, and everything changed. And the mad thing with This Is England was, the only regret I had about the film This Is England was that I couldn't explore all the characters, because they were all based on obviously people I loved as a kid and had grown up with. And so when the idea for the series actually was a joke initially. I was in Channel 4, and I sometimes tease the press, and I sometimes tease people with like fake ideas. And this woman from TV sort of said to me, "Oh, you should come into TV. We'd love to have you down here, guys." And I was like, I said, "Oh yeah." So I've been working on an idea. Yeah, she said, "Lizzie, I'd love to talk to you about this." And I was like, "Yes, This Is England." What, another film? I said, no, like a series. I said, it's like, basically follows on from there 2 years later. And so it started off as me winding someone up at Channel 4. And about 6 weeks later, it was all budgeted, and we were writing the script.
Right, I'm just going to quickly make way. We've got a late entrance. Danielle Trevor's here, everyone. fashionable way to enter a party.
She looks like, I've always wanted to do this. When you walked in there, I wanted to go, Juanita to the centre stage, please. Juanita to the centre stage. I'm not saying you look like a stripper. I'm just
Feels like a massive
she looks like a stripper. Juanita to the centre stage, please. Juanita to the centre stage. Your song is on.
So Tom obviously became you, the young version. How many people did you see before Tom got the role, or was it as soon as you saw him?